Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, a Haggerty10 Twitter handle, as you can see. I'm joined today by Alison McConnell. How are you, Alison?
Still here, Tony, still standing.
Excellent. I just wanted to say to the viewers, do not adjust your set, it's just temporary interference with the shirt here, but there you go. Now, Alison, it is the morning of the big night, Europa Conference League playoff round, Celtic against Norwegian champions Bodo Glimt. Both teams like to attack. This could be a good one.
Yeah, I think you would hope for a fairly open game. I think a game like that probably suits Celtic more. I think we've spoken fairly often this season about how difficult sometimes Celtic find it to break down teams who camp in and when there's not really a huge amount of space. So I think it would suit Celtic if it is quite open. I think also Bodo Glimt aren't back in their competitive league yet. I think the Norwegian league runs March to November, so I think they're not back playing competitive football just yet. It's the sort of flip side of what maybe Celtic and Rangers go through in the summer when they maybe are thrust into very early qualifying rounds for Champions League football and Europa League football before they've really had a chance to get up and running in the league. So I think Celtic will maybe look to capitalise on any rustiness that they have and just try and basically come out of the opening leg with a fairly decent platform then to go and build on it next week when they head over to Norway and try and get through the round.
I mean, Celtic are in great form, Alison. They've won 9 on the spin, going for 10 wins on the spin. They're unbeaten in 26 domestic games. They're also unbeaten in 12 games at Celtic Park. 2 of them were in Europe. So, Celtic are very much the form side coming into this one.
Yeah, I think they definitely have a bit of momentum. I think they'll be what that brings is some belief and confidence in the style that you're playing, the philosophy that you're playing. I think it leads to a belief within the side and in the team as a unit. What I would say is I think they've played particularly well since the turn of the year. They played particularly well against Rangers. I thought they played well against Motherwell, but I think it's not entirely consistent yet. I think they're getting results, but I think you've still got to see them really accelerate from 0 to 90 minutes and also just sustain that in every game. And I think much of tonight's game will be about performance as much as anything else. I think Ange Postecoglou will field a very strong team. I think, and I think it will be a game where you'll want to see a strong performance as much as anything else. I think you could see his frustration at times in the first half on Sunday. You could certainly hear it, and how he wants to play and the style of football that he wants to play. And I think you'll see them looking to really try and impose themselves on Bodo Glimt.
Now, we were charged with the unenviable task, as we always are, of picking a starting 11, Alison, and lo and behold, we picked the same one. Now, the biggest dilemma we both had was Tom Rogic or Matt O'Reilly, but off the top of my head, our team was Hart in goal, Juranovic right back, Carter Vickers, Starfelt, Taylor, McGregor, Hatate, Rogic, Abada, Maida and Jota, wasn't it? That's what we both picked. Yeah, I'm right in saying that. And we both sort of said in our wee kind of preamble about who would form in the midfield. And Matt O'Reilly's done nothing wrong. It's just that it is a total toss-up in my head. And if he plays Matt O'Reilly, then I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah, I actually wonder if there's a decision still to be made about what the strongest starting 11 is in Ange Postecoglou's mind. I think there are arguments to be had all over the pitch, particularly, I think, in midfield, where there really are decisions to be made. I would agree with you. I don't think Matt O'Reilly's done much wrong. I don't think he's put a foot wrong at all since he arrived. In fact, I would suggest he's probably compounded expectations with the manner in which he's come in and made an incredible contribution in a very short space of time. I think you're signing someone from League One. I'm not sure you're really anticipating the kind of impact that he's had. I think there is a call to be made about what the favoured starting 11, what the strongest starting 11 is, particularly in that midfield area. I just think Tom Rogic possibly edges it at the minute. I think what he has. I think he's playing some of the most consistent football of his career this season. I think it maybe has echoes of that invincible season where he had a very good campaign under Brendan Rodgers. I think he's been consistent. You've seen the best of him this season. It's kind of slightly different role that he's played. I think Callum McGregor is a mainstay. I think when McGregor's fit, he plays. I don't think there's any question about that. And then I think Rio Hatate too. I think you've got to make an argument that he's very difficult now to drop, given the contribution that he's made since he arrived last month. And I think if you're someone like David Turnbull, who had been a mainstay in the first half of the campaign, and you're unlucky enough to get injured and you're coming back and you're maybe thinking to yourself, I'm going to have a fight on my hands here to get straight back in.
Well, the retro Celtic comes in and says, "Good morning. I want Tommy Rogic to control that midfield. When he's on it, we play." There you go. That's we've given Rogic the nod over O'Reilly, but it is a close call, to be fair. I mean, a lot of people, Alison, are saying that, a couple of comments on here saying that they'd rather Celtic lost in Europe, but Ange's taking it serious. He was asked yesterday, Georgios Giacomakis did the press as well. He said that the players have been encouraged by Ange to dream big. And then Ange said, well, we're in the competition. Someone has to win it. So it just shows you his attitude towards it. He's taking every competition seriously.
Yeah, I think also too there's a knock-on effect when you're playing games. I think if you go in and it's a lackluster performance, if you lose a bit of momentum, I think then there's always a fear just about whether or not that derails you in a bigger sense. I think there's no surprise really in a manager coming out and saying, this is a competition I'm taking seriously. I want to go as far as we possibly can. I don't think there's anything overly surprising about that. I think everyone knows, Ange Postecoglou will know, everyone else knows, listen, the league campaign is essentially where you're judged. This is where decisions are made about futures and everything else. It's where you really are at the mercy of how people judge your reign as a manager. And I think he knows his remit was to come in and try and win the title. And I think it is the be-all and end-all for Celtic this season. I don't think there's any ambiguity about that. But at the same time, I think if you're in a competition, then you want to go out and give a decent account of yourself and just sustain some of the momentum that you're building. And I also think Celtic now, they do have the squad that should be able to cope with it. I think when you look at numerically, it is a pretty big squad now that they have. I think there is depth, and I think we're discussing there, Tony, whether or not Matt O'Reilly starts or whether Tom Rogic starts, and whatever one starts and whatever one is on the bench, you have an option then within the game to change things, to freshen things up, to maybe give fresh impetus at some point in an encounter, which I don't think Celtic necessarily had in the opening half of the campaign. So I think they can cope with it, and I think they'll want to go out and give a fairly compelling account of themselves.
Style and philosophy-wise, Alison, this looks like a bit of a clash because I think both teams like to play the same way. They're both attack-minded teams. I mean, mindful that Bodo Glimt beat Roma and 6-1 in their own place and then drew 2-2 in Rome. And I know they've sold 4-star players since then, but Ange was saying they've still got the same manager, they've still got the same style, and they've still got the nucleus of the young squad that is bought into his philosophy, a bit similar to what Ange's did at Celtic since he arrived. So it could be a cracker.
Yeah, I think the stage is set for a fairly open encounter. I think that's what you would anticipate if both teams stick to their same philosophy, and there's absolutely no reason for you to think that they'll deviate from the way that they wish to play. Then I think it should be an open game. And I think what you've seen from the Celtic side throughout the campaign since Ange Postecoglou came in is that it is a team that have goals in them. They look like a team, for all that they can be fragile at times from set pieces and maybe look vulnerable at points in games defensively. I think what you have is a team that very much look to create things, look to make things happen, look to score goals. And I think it's why he endeared himself, part of the reason why he endeared himself so quickly the Celtic support was just that there was a very clear philosophy early on. And I think if you can see that and you can establish that there is a means of playing and a style of football that you want to play that is appealing to people, then I think you know that you're always going in the right direction.
Is there a lot of prestige attached to this Europa Conference League because it's the inaugural one, Alison? It's the first time that it's been played for, and if Celtic could go deep into the competition and possibly say win it, then there is merit in that, because you are then testing yourself at a level where if you do win the title, then it prepares you for the Champions League.
Yeah, I think it probably depends on who you speak to. I think Brendan Rodgers made it quite clear that he didn't have much time for it. You know, I think his comments in the immediate aftermath of Leicester going out the Europa League, and even recently when he was saying, you know, we didn't know that we were in it. I think maybe for some teams it maybe doesn't hold any gravitas or any real weight. And, you know, I don't think anyone's kidding themselves on. I think there's a premier tournament in Europe, and it's the Champions League. I think you would have to first and foremost say, you know, the real glamour and prestige is associated with the Champions League, particularly when you start to get to the knockout stages that you're seeing now, and you have some real heavyweights in there. I think the Europa League even drops down a level in terms of that. It doesn't hold the same weight. And then, of course, this is now seen as a third-tier tournament. So I think Celtic's progress might almost depend on how other teams view it, and whether or not they do view it as a distraction, and that it's something that they're not taking particularly seriously. And that might help Celtic's cause if they go to try and progress in the tournament. I think if they do, and we're probably getting a bit of ahead of ourselves here, but if they do progress and get to the latter stages, I'm sure there would be some excitement and there would be a lot of interest in it. But I think probably for most people, the be-all and end-all is winning the league and trying to wrestle a championship back. If there's any kind of progress in European football, I think it would be welcomed along the way.
Simon Thomason said, wouldn't it be good for Celtic to be the first name on the trophy? Well, they were the first name on the Champions League trophy, as we know, at the European Cup, because Real Madrid kept the old trophy for winning it so many times. So there you go. And final 25th of May, Alison, Tirana, Albania. The Albanian president's a big, massive Celtic supporter. People are saying the stars are aligning, all this kind of stuff. But you never know. It's a tournament that Celtic are in, maybe not through choice, but they will try and give it their all. And up front, Alison, we have the Maeda, Georgios Giakoumakis debate again. We both opted for Maeda. I just thought that he came on and he looked sharp on Sunday and scored his goal, typical striker's goal. He was there when the ball broke after his initial header, and a lot of people saying that Giakoumakis offers something different. What was your thoughts on Maeda over Giakoumakis?
Yeah, quite similar actually, Tony. I would agree with you. I do think Giakoumakis offers something similar. I thought you could see the relief in him when he scored last weekend. I thought he was desperate for a goal against Motherwell. I thought you could sense it. He felt as though he needed the goal, and you just wonder if maybe once he's got that, he maybe settles a bit and feels a bit more relaxed about it. I think strikers always know that they're judged on their return, but Maeda, I think, has looked quite sharp. He's got a bit of pace. He's fairly versatile in how he plays that role and drifting out wide and coming inside. And I just have a feeling that I think he might start this evening. I could be wrong on that front. But again, maybe it goes back to what we spoke about earlier in the show, that you have options now to change it within a game that weren't necessarily there in the earlier days of the season. So I think whichever one starts, I think there's a strong likelihood that you'll see the other come on and have some kind of contribution to make at some stage of the game.
Ted comes in and says, got to start Giakoumakis, and Martin McBride says, GG must start for me. He's coming on to a great game, guys. All about opinions, isn't it? Frank Brennan, morning Frank, how you doing? GG has got to start scoring goals. And Glenn Yourself comes in and says, Maeda over Giakoumakis to start the game against Bodo Glimt, in my opinion. Yep. And then Alex, you can start Giakoumakis to ragdoll Miller. So that's always a thing. And as you say, Alison, that's the wonderful thing that Ange now has at his disposal. It wasn't there early in the season. He now has that luxury. So it doesn't really matter who you rotate or put on the bench. You're bringing on more or less like for like, but it's quality for quality, isn't it?
And I think that's the difference. Yeah, I think there is. There's certainly more depth now within the squad to cope with the rigours of the number of games that lie ahead over the next few months. I genuinely do think that he may not yet know or have quite decided on what his strongest starting 11 is, and I think that comes to the fore through games and through performances and just judging who is just who's in form at the minute.
That's a kind of headache though that a manager loves, and Ange says these are the kind of challenges that he relishes. Keeping himself awake at night trying to pick a strong 11. That's the kind of thing he revels in. He says it's all the hard stuff about football management that he loves, and he's always talking about the challenges. So I guess it'll be second nature to him.
Yeah, and I think what it does is it lends a freshness to the squad. I think there's always a danger of players stagnating when you're assured of a first team start. I think when there is competition for places, you develop a hunger within a squad and a real drive to always be in top form and be on your toes and be the top of your game, because you know that there's maybe someone breathing down your neck to come and take your place. And I think what that does is just it creates a relentlessness in the side, and it creates a level and a standard that you're sustaining top form on a consistent basis. So I think he'll be quite happy to know that there are people pushing one another in areas of the park. I think there's still arguments that there are specific roles that you could still do with having a bit more quality in. But I think for now, what you've seen across 2 transfer windows is essentially the rebuilding of a squad. I think there's been 17 players come in over those 2 windows. So what you see now really is an Ange Postecoglou side. You're seeing a team that very much has his stamp on it. They are his players. I think there were only 2 players that started the game against Rangers who had been there last season and gone through everything. So what you're seeing very much is that it has become his side.
Alison, from where Ange has come with the team since June, and we're now February, going into March, and Celtic are still alive in 4 competitions. People are using terms like quadruple and stuff like that. That was beyond every Celtic supporter's wildest dreams, wasn't it? To even just be mentioning these things and to be in with a chance of winning a domestic treble and a possible European trophy, it's unbelievable, really, isn't it? And it's testament to the job that Ange has done. Now, regardless of what happens, I think every Celtic supporter will concede it's been a wonderful season, and that it's and it could be the silver lining could be wrestling the title back from Rangers, and that's the one they want desperately.
Yeah, I think judgment will probably be reserved until the end of the season. I think it does come down to winning the title, and I think having hauled themselves back into it and to get themselves in front, I think they need now to kick on. I think to allow themselves to be overtaken might just invite a fair bit of criticism. I would agree with you that I think in terms of the rebuilding, there's been a fairly swift return. I think you've seen players. I think you'd have to say the manager very clearly has an eye for a player. He's bought well. He's bought sensibly. It's been, they've not spent extravagantly to get there. It's been fairly prudent. They've sold players to reinvest into the squad and rebuild. But I think at times it was an argument last season that the chasm that was between the 2 sides and the 25 points gap between Rangers and Celtic was maybe not reflective of the quality within the squad. And I think sometimes it does come down to very slim margins. And I think this season also what you've seen is maybe just a rub of the green that at times wasn't there in other seasons, like small things dropping for you and small decisions going for you that were maybe going against you last season. And I'm thinking of, like last minute, 97th minute winners at Ross County, or maybe even just riding your luck a little bit at Tynecastle in the last few minutes of games, or up at Pittodrie and hanging on and getting those results, whereas last season it maybe wasn't. And I'm thinking about that game at Pittodrie where Celtic were pegged back to 3 each, having looked as though they were assured of the point, having got themselves back in front and got it to 3-2. And I think sometimes it does come down to small margins and small differences. But I would agree with you that what you've seen is a different belief about the squad. I don't think they look so fragile. And I think so much of that comes from winning games, and there's respite too from the pressures and the criticisms and the off-field things that come when it's not going well.
Okay, prediction time, Alison. What's your prediction for tonight?
I think I'll say Celtic 2-0.
2-0 Celtic. I'll say 3-1 Celtic, and that'll be hopefully enough to take them to the Arctic Circle and see them through the second leg. But we'll reconvene tomorrow, Alison, and having got it completely wrong, no doubt. But we'll see what happens. But enjoy your day, enjoy your night. Thanks for your contributions. Try and read them out as we go along, but come in thick and fast. Alison, always enjoy your contribution. Thanks very much. We'll see you tomorrow, guys.